Unfortunately, there's a shortage of desks right now because of the pandemic. What I'm going to do is take some old pedestals like this and show you how you can fix them up, patch them, paint them, put a new top on, and make a brand new desk. This is a project for my wife, so I hope she's going to like it.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
What I need to do is take that apart, repair it, and put it back together so I can get this chair in working order.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
This is part of a 3-part series about desks. The first video is on home improvement woodworking, and I show how to build a simple desk using angle brackets. I've also got a video coming up on how to build a keyboard tray and mount a monitor on a stand and a laptop on a stand to make efficient use in a built-in desk. So in this project, what I'm going to be doing is painting these pedestals a white color. And I've already gone ahead and I've drilled the hardware holes here. I got pastry pulls to conceal the holes that are here. So I don't need to worry about that, but I want to make sure I got those holes drilled in the right spot before I invested any more time in this project. The first step is to prepare these for paint. And to do that, I'm using a degreaser, and that cleans off all the oils that might have been in people's hands that might prevent the paint from sticking. The other step I need to do is sand these with an abrasive so that the paint has something to stick to. Instead of washing it down and then sanding, I'm going to do both at the same time using this. This is a Scotch-Brite pad. The maroon pads are a 320 grit. So I can use this with this spray, and I'm doing 2 jobs at once. There's a couple spots here that looks like there's something spilt on them, so I'm not sure how this is going to come clean. Let's take a look. I'll let that sit there for a second, let it penetrate, see what happens. The nice thing about these Scotch-Brite pads is they're so flexible. They just wrap around the edge of pieces here. Now, when I looked at this desk, it looks like it's been finished at least one other time. So this has been repaired at least once, maybe twice. So there's a few things I might have to fix as I go through this project. Perfect, look at that, it's coming right off. Okay, let's take a look. Yep, came off. So I'll just make sure all the cleaner's off, and I can move on to the next drawer. As you work through cleaning off the piece, you'll find the imperfections. And here I've got a divot that I need to repair, and here I've got a crack that only goes this far. It doesn't go all the way up the piece. So there's no way I can squeeze that back together again. So this is another spot I need to fill. Again, it's important to clean the surfaces before you put that filler on, so the filler has something to grab to. Now that I cleaned up the surface, you can see the finish clearly, and the last finisher here put on a bit of a eggshell orange peel finish. So I'm going to have to sand that down a little bit more. Before I do though, I'm going to fill this patch here and this crack as well. Now before I fill the crack, what I'm going to do is just excavate it a little bit, and that'll give me a little more area for the filler to sit in that slot and give it more of a chance to grip. And then I'm using a DAP filler here. This is water-based, and what I'm doing is just working it into that crack across. If you pull this way, you'll pull into the crack, but if you go across the crack, it forces the filler in there. Do the same thing up here. I'm just going to add a big gob, and this is just like doing drywall mud. Now the difference here is I'm going to leave this high and then sand it down. Normally with drywall mud you want to go on thin coats. You see if I pull that, it's pulling it out of the divot here. I've cleaned off all the surfaces, and you can see here a difference in the stain color. So this would have been the newer stain. This would have been either some of the bare wood or some of the old finish. And I can see up here there's some flaking off. This would have been from some stripper. So maybe this was actually the third finish that's on this. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's more evidence of it here. But the reason I'm showing you this here is there's a crack here. And this crack, unlike the other one I showed you, does go down a fair bit here. And if I pull this, I can actually open it up. So this needs to be repaired here because it's not holding. And there's a fairly simple way to deal with that. I've got a neat trick for that. I'll show you. I need access to the back here for this trick. I'm going to use dental floss to put the glue in. So I need to, oh, that was easy. Take off that support piece. And then I put a spreader clamp in here. And what that does is it opens up this crack here. And now I can put glue in. So I put glue in the top here, and what I want to do is get that glue all the way down. I need this joint to have glue on both sides, the full length of the crack. Now it's wide enough at the top that that glue is going to naturally start to come down, but as it gets down near the bottom, it's not going to want to get in there. So that's where the dental floss comes in. Just like flossing your teeth, what I'm going to do is move that glue down that crack. Okay, so I've fully loaded up this joint here, and the way you tell if you've got enough glue is the glue squeeze out when you clamp it. So I'm going to take off the spreader clamp and bring in, start at the top here. Now, I need to make sure I align that properly. Okay, as I'm clamping that, it's on a bit of an angle, and the pieces are actually doing this. So I need to clamp it here first to keep them lined up. So let me grab a clamp. I have these little cawls made up. It's just packing tape on pine, and what that does is it prevents the glue from sticking, and the pine prevents the wood from getting marred. So by putting this on first, now I've got those two pieces aligned, and then I can clamp it again. So you can see the squeeze out here happening. Here I've got some squeeze out, a little bit here. It's starting to come out here. So I'm going to put another clamp on here, because when you're clamping things, clamping pressure comes from the pad at a 45-degree angle. So this clamp is providing clamping pressure to here. So I need to put another clamp about here. And then we'll see what happens here. More glue should squeeze out of that as we apply pressure. Yep, you see more is coming out. And one more clamp here. Should be enough to provide proper clamping for this whole section. Now, the nice thing about clamping something that's got a finish on it is this glue just wipes off. It's really easy cleanup. When you have bare wood, the glue can stain the wood. So I'll just take a small piece of paper towel here and clean this up. The glue's dried here overnight, so I can take the clamps off. And what I'm going to be doing is sanding this all out. You can see I put filler on here, and we'll see how this turns out as well. It might need some filler, but we'll see. I want to tell you a little bit about sanding because I frequently see people doing this wrong. When using a random orbital sander, the machine is sanding in several directions so it doesn't leave scratches. But I frequently see people moving it back and forth like it's a sanding block. This machine will do far more than you can do with your hand. So what you need to do is just move it at a slow pace, let the machine do the work, and provide some gentle pressure on top. Follow that along with feeling and making sure you've got all the spots, and you get some good results. The other thing is make sure you're using a shop vac with a HEPA filter, and capturing all that dust is important. Wood dust can permanently damage your lungs. So if you breathe in enough, you're going to do some damage. So if you're not using a dust collector with a HEPA filter, make sure you're wearing a P100 respirator to protect your lungs. This split here is a little bit raised on one side, and if you just continually sand that down, it just averages out the area. So the best thing to do is to scrape it down, and there are two different ways to do that. One is with blades, and the other one is with a card scraper. So I'll show you with blades. You want a clean blade, fresh out of the pack. And what you're going to do is just curve it a little bit with your hands and run it along that edge. So you can see here I'm getting some long curls, and it's just because I've got such a long sharp surface, I'm able to level things out very, very effectively. On the drawer fronts, I'm going to be a little more gentle. I'm going to sand them by hand. I'm using a 120 grit sandpaper. What I'm looking to do is smooth out all the spots that I'd patched, and then just even out the sanding across the whole thing. I'm ready to move on to the woodworking. I'm building a top and an apron at the front here, and there was an apron at the back, but I'm going to future-proof this desk. I want to be able to clamp on a monitor stand and a laptop stand. So I'm going to be putting in a courtesy panel in the back instead, and that will give me rigidity for the support of the cabinet, as well as space at the back to be able to clamp on that monitor stand. For me, this is the fun part. I really enjoy the woodworking aspect of furniture repairs. What I'm going to be doing here is adding in an apron. And I could just put this on straight, but I want to add a little bit of flair to it. So I'm going to put a gentle curve in it. And what I'm going to do is put a bead on that curve to accentuate it as well. There are a couple ways that you can smooth out this curve. I prefer using a spoke shave. If you've never done this before, what you need to do is run downhill, which means on this side I have to go the opposite direction. I've got the courtesy panel made now, and what I'm going to do is assemble everything upside down. That way I can use the bench top as a reference point. So the apron is going here, and then the courtesy panel, which is the back panel, is going on here, and I've cut a hole in it. That'll allow for future wiring if we decide to use some technology on this. So this back courtesy panel is going to be 2.5 inches in, and again, that's because I want the ability to clamp something on here for a monitor stand. So I'm going to measure in 2.5 inches here, and then I'll put a mark another 3/4 inches out, and that tells me where I need to put the screw in. So I'll do the same thing down here. There's the 2.5, and then another 3/4. Screw goes in the middle. I'll countersink the holes from the inside. So the second pedestal goes on the same way. It's just easier now because these are sturdy and they're easier to line up. Well, it's starting to look like a desk. I've got a top I'm putting on here, and I'm using plywood to build that. But it's important to understand, if you're mixing plywood with solid wood like these cabinets here, the two don't go together well. Solid wood moves with humidity, so it expands across the grain in the summertime because of high humidity. And in the wintertime, when there's low humidity, it shrinks. So this wood is constantly moving. You can't see it with your eye, but it is moving. If I were to take dimensionally stable plywood and put it on this cabinet and screw it right in there, what would happen over several seasons is the solid wood would begin to crack because it can't shrink or expand. So when you attach plywood to solid wood, there's a certain way to do that, and I'll show you how to do that. First, what I'm going to do is take the dimensions. Now I have the desk together. I'm going to be putting a 1-inch solid band on this to give it a little more thickness than what a sheet of plywood will offer, and then route a profile on, and then I'll show you how it all gets put together. After that, we'll put the primer on, put the paint on, and we've got ourselves a desk. Sharp and accurate tools make for perfect joints. I finished putting the edging on here, and I had to get into some creative clamping. I know I have clamps that are more than 4 feet long, so I've used my quick grip clamps here to nest against each other and provide that tension. So we'll take these off and we'll clean up these edges. It's time to get at my great-grandfather's hand plane. I'm using my table saw as a bench here because I've got the desk on the bench, and what I'm doing is just taking the plane and getting this smooth here. Just have to be very careful in how I do that, that I don't take down any of the plywood veneer. So there's a nice big shaving. I'm getting close, but not quite there. So over here at the end, I'm close. Up here I've got a lot more to go. So what I'm going to do is just mark it with a pencil so I know where to stop. I'm going to ease the profile of the desk with this here. That'll give it a soft edge at the start and just give it a bit of a decorative look as well. This is a larger bit, so I'm going to slow down my speed a little bit here. I just need to sand out the profiled edge, and if I turn off the light here you can see why. See, there's a fine line right there. A bit of sandpaper will take that out. There, now it's nice and smooth. The sanding's all done now and the desk is ready for priming and painting. This edge I put on here is more complex. If you're doing this project, you might just want to put a simple edge on it. As I mentioned before, this is a project for my wife and I wanted to be really happy with it. So I put a little extra effort in this. The next step is priming and painting, and I'm using an hvlp sprayer. This is a really fun process to watch this transform into a painted finish. So I'm going to set this up outside because my shop is a disaster right now with wood shavings and shavings from the router. So outside, it's a nice day outside, there's little wind, so I'm going to tarp everything up and get ready. Take this apart into components because it's easier to spray that way, and you can watch as this transforms into a nice white desk. I've got 2 coats of primer and everything, and I've got 3 coats on the top, because that top you're really going to notice, so I want to make sure it's extra smooth. What I'm doing now is sanding everything off, and I prefer to use 400 grit sandpaper with some packing foam. This is some foam that offers some flexibility, and that way when I wrap the paper around it and I'm pushing on it, I've got a block that's not necessarily hitting all the high points, but it's following the contours of the work. The one thing to be cautious of is when you get to the corners, you don't want to be taking the finish right off. So here I've got most of the primer on, there's just the odd spot, but it's very easy to blow right through that. And the technique I use is with this sanding block, I always finish the edge here by coming off this way. If I start this way, I risk going on an angle and really wearing off that edge. The technique I use is to start about here and work this way and lift it off at the end, and then again land it here and come back this way and lift it off at the end. So this is what it looks like. So you can see here, I'm taking nothing off the corners, yet I'm able to get that smooth. The last part is to just smooth out this edge, and that's where you have to be very gentle to take the sandpaper and really just get that smooth, and be careful. You do have to touch that corner a little bit, just enough to get it smooth. The rest of the sanding goes pretty quickly. There was some ink in the bottom of this drawer, and you can see it's bled right through the primer. So what I need to do to prevent that from coming through in the paint is to put a stain blocker on it. Shellac is a blocking primer, and that's what you want to use on stains like this, and that way it's got a permanent coating on it that nothing will come through in your finished paint. I put 2 coats of primer on everything and sanded them all down, and then 2 coats of paint. The last coat I put on just the drawer fronts and the top, and I sanded them down first to make sure they were nice and smooth, and then put that final coat on. Unfortunately, when I put the final coat on, there was a bit of breeze outside, so there's a bit of overspray on these, and it's just tiny paint particles that have dried on the surface. So I just use a paper bag and just gently rub the surface here, and what it does is it takes off those little nibs that are sitting right on top. To attach the top, I've got screws coming right through here at the front. I'm going to lock in the front, and the back's going to float. So on the apron here, I'm also going to put an angle bracket, and that will allow me to attach that at the front. So at the back where I need it to float, remember I've got a solid plywood piece at the top here and solid wood at the sides, and the solid wood is going to move back and forth with humidity changes. So I need to make sure that where I attach it, it can move. The approach I use for this is really simple. I just use an angle bracket, and what I'll do is put a screw in there that's loose at the bottom, and that will allow this to rotate this way as needed. So I just need to make sure that the screw is at a point where it can't lift up any further, and that way the top will be secure, but allow it to move left to right. With the base assembled, you can see here, here, and here is where the top's getting fastened down. And then over in that corner and over in this corner, this is where the clips will allow these sides to move back and forth. Before I wrap up this video, I want to thank our Patreons. Their names are over here, and they're helping us by contributing to our video production work to help us make more videos like this. So thank you, Patreons. If you'd like to become a Patreon, there's a link in the video description below. While I was working on this desk, I also had another customer approach me. She has a large coffee table, and she'd like to convert that into a desk. So I'm going to be doing that coming up using these X-style legs. If you'd like to subscribe to our channel, you can click over here, click on the bell icon, and you'll get notified every time we publish a video. Thanks for watching Fixing Furniture.